Immy Mali's work deals with questions of memory, presence and absence, and personal and shared experiences and narratives. Immy will be speaking with Alexis Teyie, who is a writer of poetry, essays, fiction, one of the editors at Downriver Road, a Nairobi-based literary magazine, as well as the co-founder of Magic Door, a publishing lab based in Nairobi. This afternoon at Nkai, we currently have on exhibit Immy Mali's work, Dear Marcue Love Immy, a sculpture completed in 2019, a work that we recently acquired for the Nkai collection. And so we will be hearing from Immy regarding that work in particular, but also about how it fits into her broader artistic practice. Thank you to all of you who are joining us in person and online as well. Over to you, Immy and Alexis.
Excellent. Thank you. So I should say, I think we're a nice little group, so feel free to interject, jump in, feel free, to interrupt, chime in with questions, suggestions, exclamations are also very welcome. So maybe I thought I would start with setting the scene with what you're thinking with, what's in your mind space at this time, what music, what books, what artists are you with and coming to this moment with, and then we'll get into a little bit about the work and then broadly your practice.
Okay. What music? I love Asa's music. I also listen to Nina Simone. I listen to wow, there's a lot of things I listen to that are not connected. Yeah. But Benjamin, I think it's called Benjamin Clementine.
Yeah.
Yes? Okay, good. Him too.
Bones.
Artists, I've followed Phoebe Boswell's work, her drawings, that process of drawing, and also her animations. I've followed William Kentridge's work, of course, in terms of animations. I've followed, some keep going away. I've followed, so there's a book that I keep going back to. It's Walter Benjamin's Berlin Childhood. I just like the way he kind of makes you go through a telephone, and like you go to Berlin but through a telephone. So things like that. I pick inspirations from different places. And
I think what also comes through in this particular installation, sculpture, book, we'll keep playing around and swapping those words, is sort of build an atmosphere of what it felt to be a child in that moment. I loved, and also growing up in Kenya, I loved recognizing, oh, that's how that was. Like you also sang that song, and some of those kind of familiar games and sort of phrases that are building really a world. So I thought maybe it would be helpful to start with like, especially now with the privilege of distance, what are the different strands that you like particularly think about today that are coming through in that work? So I love the nursery rhymes, obviously, and we always debate about, oh, is that the real lyric of that? Anyway, so maybe say a little bit more about the different experiences that at least now are resonant in the book.
Well, now I think many different things come up. I've just had my first child. She's now 1 year and 3 months. And for some reason, everyone keeps saying, you should add her to your projects. You should, because you're doing this on childhood and you have her now, why don't you include her? And I'm like, this is a whole human being with her own, yes. With her own life. So she will decide if she wants to be part of this or not, is kind of where I am now. Because before they're like, oh, are you writing about the stages of your pregnancy and all that? And all that kind of kept coming up. But also when I did the book, I did it while I started it here. Then I went and did part of it in South Africa. So all this writing of these letters has kept happening as I travel. And I feel like that sort of was a space where I was trying to connect with home. Connect with home and try to find something familiar in a space that you go to. When I did it for the 2 years in Amsterdam, it was more a connection to home. Like when I look back at it and the different things, because I would look at a cat and it would mean so many different things than what the cat literally is.
Yeah.
So all those different things. But now from where I am now in Kampala, I'm writing a lot less in terms of the letters project, the letters to my childhood. I'm writing a lot less. And I keep questioning myself, is it because of where I am and the comfort that I have of having people around you that you can rely on, that you can, that maybe because some of the things that come through the book are issues of racism, issues of colonialism. Of course, that also happens in Kampala, where all there's different ways of approaching different things are so linked to the colonial background. So I think that is also a space where I can step away from and look at the book from,
Yeah, I mean, and that's curious to me that right now you're experiencing a bit of a lull, because when I read them in different sections, so some of them I kind of just inhaled them very quickly. They're very readable.
Yes.
But I think I was thinking about like how much we leave behind in a space. So even, I mean, I can't believe that's a real song, the Slave America, that blew my mind. Maybe Immy will sing in her wonderful singing voice. That song. I kept thinking, like, we're often thinking about how much of this space we carry. So even being in South Africa, writing from the Netherlands, and how much that's coming through in your body, and how you're pulling, like as you say in one point, you couldn't distinguish between the younger you and your older self. So I suppose my question, which take it as you will, is like, what parts of you do you think are left in like where you grew up, which is of course not the same Uganda it is today.
What parts of me are left?
Left seems negative, like residues. Seems more evocative.
Okay, so the different what parts are left? So I don't know how to answer this or how to even approach this question.
You can sidestep.
Yes. So some of the things that maybe I would go to food, because some of the letters I write from a place of food. I draw a lot towards food because it's a comfort thing. It's also something I like to do, and I also like how it brings people together. And it's the only way I actually, because I intentionally started cooking in my kitchen in the Netherlands so I could bring people. And it was interesting how to see how all these people wanted to come and kept asking me when are we cooking again? Can we come and do this again? And I was like, you people have had these kitchens in your place for so long. Why haven't you been doing this on your own, you know? But just to see how that can happen, because so that community I think is something that was left, but I tried to create it. Because community I think for me is very key, and I think it comes up a lot in the letters.
Absolutely. And for the folks who are here earlier for the workshop, we decided to go on a lovely path around communal reading. And so you mentioned at one point, like reflecting on the book, you weren't sure which ones are your memories and which ones are your sisters. So I wondered a little bit of that. I think that shared collective memory comes up in a lot of your other works. I wondered, one, on a practical basis, like, you know, what did your family think when they saw some of these letters? And then more widely, who are you now excited to bring in that sort of memory making?
Well, because I shared the letters mostly with my mom, because the images in the book are also from her family album, which is literally her album. So some of the things she's like, do you need to remember this? because some of them are like traumatic for her as well, as a mom, that some of these things actually happened. So there are questions like, do you need to remember this as well? The things that I had to ask her about when I was writing, I was like, I'm going to write this and this and this. Can I include this? Can I? Because there are also moments in the letters that are very personal, and yeah, it was just sort of like, how do you get into, how do you get family into this? So I kind of ended up asking her a lot about these different things, and there are moments where she's like, I'm not sure if you can do this, but if it's for your artwork, then you can do it. You know?
Special license.
Special license. Yeah, so should be saying things like this. And the moments that I just had to take out, because there were also painful memories for her. And I'll be like, okay, I will not show this. I can keep this letter. Or, so bits like that. So there was a bit of kind of deciding together.
Yeah, you're gonna have to negotiate that together. So, I mean, I hear that on some memories are shared, and it feels like you would feel uncomfortable sharing those. And I wonder if there are other pieces, other letters that were not included in this final sort of album of letters.
Maybe 2 or 3. Yeah, 2 or 3 letters that I decided to keep. With myself. I came with some of them for the workshop, and I was like, maybe not. So there's that, definitely.
I mean, and I think about this often the last few years on, we've had, iterations of this same conversation. I think more and more people are talking about national memory, like collective or community memories, and wondering, thinking about the right to be forgotten, and what can be held and withheld, and what rights do we have over that politically, also surveillance. But then I think also as an artist, you get to make some of these calls, I think. So I'd love to hear you talk about broadly your sense of what in your own life and memories you're not ready or willing to mine, by which I say, I mean, obviously not the story, but what you think about in that regard. And then a little bit about, I guess with the personal stories, I'm always curious about, what year was this? I have that kind of a historian's mind, and like, so I would be curious now with kind of the distance of time, if you're rereading certain letters differently, and how so? So it's 2 questions.
Okay. Maybe I'll start with the second one, because with the letters, I mean, with the letters, I got to a point where I didn't want to read them. Where I didn't want to read them because I had gone through them and gone through them and gone through them. So I haven't actually read them in the last 2 years. I haven't actually read them in the last 2 years. I listened to the sound, and then I reached a point where I couldn't listen to the sound anymore. So with that, there's that bit. But then areas that I wouldn't mind in terms of writing and what, that is very hard to say, because sometimes memory presents itself in different forms.
Sure.
And I've noticed this because with the process of writing, as I was writing, there would be different. It would start in a different place, and then it totally ends in another place. And it was because of how. With the process of writing, it always would go out, black out, literally, and like close everything off, and then start writing. And it felt like having a conversation. And then there are things that would echo through that conversation that I would keep writing. So I think it's the possibility of actually writing these things and writing and noting them down, and things actually does happen. I like just end up writing everything that I'm remembering, but it's later when I'm putting together the book and what that I'm like, okay, maybe I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna show this or that. Same happened with the work that I did earlier called Virtually Mine, where I had to sit down with my partner and it's like, okay, we can share these messages, but not these ones. Sort of, yeah. Yeah,
and I think as experiencing that, I had these moments where I would have to pause and look at the outside of the book. It felt a bit too personal. Like I think I rely on a certain opacity in art. Like I need them to make some abstractions to make it look far away. And like I know it's probably something about themselves, but I want it to feel much more fictionalized. And even with the device that we know, okay, this is of course intentional. There's there's some created other persona who's receiving this letter. It still felt incredibly raw, and it was such a curious experience. I had to think about, I am not used to sincerity in art, and I think that was I had to, kind of a difficult process, I think. And I think that's preserved because of how personal. So I wondered if you'd share with the room the process of selecting this process, turning down publishers or choosing not to go certain routes, the commercial routes. So maybe say more about that.
Okay. Yeah, well, so I think that sort of came from what I wanted to do. I only got to do the book. So I had a residency for 2 years, and then the last 2 months is when I decided, okay, now I want to make a book. But I had been in conversation with book designers before, and I had been in a conversation with them before. I had the letters, so of course there were questions that friends would make, ask. Would you like to make a book? Will you do this? Will you do that? Also because of the paper form and the writing and things like that. So it's later on that I decided to do it. So when I had conversations with them, though of course as a designer there is a vision that one has of what they want something to look like, of what you might have it as maybe the writer or artist, but then there's also, as a designer, they have an aesthetic that they work with. So that kind of came in, and then I wasn't happy with it. And so slowly I kept saying, okay, no, then I'm going to personally publish this. And with the process of publishing, it was super expensive. So I wrote to all the people who I thought had money and told them, if you pre-order this book, then you can be able to get it for this much, and I will be able to make this many and things like that. So then when I was surprised that I got almost 100% response from this, and I was like, okay, so I can do this. Then I started the process of making it. But because I like building and things, it wasn't a problem. And I also like experimenting with sound and with material. So that kind of became an easy process to get into. And also maybe the meditative, what can I call it? A sequence of making, of making is something that I just wanted to delve into. So I think that's how the book kind of came about.
Excellent. Yeah. I actually wanted to pause. I have many other things to ask, and see if other people have some questions around the book itself. If you've already had a chance to feel, look, hear the sound, particularly on the materiality of the book.
Question of, before we get to the materiality of the book, because you mentioned with a work like Virtually Mine, speaking with your partner, going through the material and the messages and seeing what to share, and having to have these conversations as well with your mother when you're working on this book. And so with work such as this and in other aspects of your work, to what point do you consider this a collaborative exercise? Because if you're thinking about shared experiences, then in many ways, all these people kind of have a stake in the work and in the ideas that you're speaking to, the things that you're remembering, and sort of uncovering that process. So how, I guess, at what point is it kind of, a consultation or a checking in, or simply getting consent, which is also something that I think is coming out in this, and how much of it is also very much collaboration in the conception of the work.
In terms of collaboration, I don't know how to get around this, because with my mom, for example, she's an accountant, but I can see she's also into design, but I think she finds it a bit strange, the space of visual art or conceptual art. I mentioned her in this book, in the credits and things like that. I mentioned her in it, and when I ask her sometimes do you want to be part of this work? Then she's like, what will it mean if I am part of this work? Why do I have to be part of it? It's your work, you do it. Where you need advice, I can tell you. So in terms of, it's mainly been a consultation space, because then she's not comfortable to be called a collaborator yet, but she's also very willing to go through, because she read each and every letter. That's when she was asking, oh, does this have to, do you have to share this? Oh, do you have to share that? So the consultation happens, and also with my partner, I don't think we thought, we did work on it together as a collaboration, so it should probably be a collaborative project, but we didn't get to naming it that way. Yeah. Yes. Done.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to ask, when doing something like that is also very personal, do you ever have a fear of maybe you're misrepresenting yourself in your own work, and or rather whether the person that you're writing about, or the experiences that they've went through, whether like it feels like an accurate representation of you as a person, and especially as something that is going to be read and interpreted by others. How do you deal with that? How do you navigate the potential discomforts of it?
Yeah. That's a good one. I look at a lot of, let's say, life and making art as a contradiction, or memory is a place of contradictions as well. So when I'm making work and it's personal, of course there are moments of doubt, like where I keep thinking, is this my memory or my sister's memory, or am I writing about something else? So that keeps definitely coming in. That keeps definitely coming in. I don't think I feel uncomfortable that I'm misrepresenting myself, because at that moment it feels like I am doing the right thing with the work, or engaging with the material, or the concept the right way. It's later on when I step away from the work, maybe 5 years later, and look at it, that different interpretations start coming from it. So every time it's like a different encounter with the work. And also with the process of growth. I read something beautiful you had in an interview with Ucho. Yes, you. Oh. With Ucho, I just get his name. He's called Damien. I think he's from Nigeria. Yeah. Yes, something that you said about about the process of working, kind of like the failure being something that should be harnessed or taken with. I will just read it because I wrote it down as like, oh, I need to remember that. No, sorry, where is that? I wrote it down. You get worse before you get better. So I know I have had it. I've had it before or something, but it was something that kind of just rang again, like resonated again when I read it. So it's sort of, the process, because the work that I did in 2013 is definitely different from now, and it's a process, but then it's interesting to see that there's a thread, however thin it is, there's some sort of thread that runs through. Okay. Yes.
Hi, Immy. Hi, Alexis. Let me act like I wasn't with you earlier today. But first, before I even ask my question, I love when two people are talking to each other and they're actually talking to each other, like clearly you've engaged with each other's texts. That's hot. Anyway, my question had to do with something that you mentioned earlier that shows up in your work, like, and I think Dawn and I talked about this, like this notion of permission and like having permission to experiment, like granting yourself permission to experiment, to try things, to use new tools, to ask people to grant you access to certain tools. And the context says that Immy was like, just go to Nation Media Group and tell them you want to use like some of their printing material. And I was like, and it was like, you can do that? But it turns out you can do that. But the thing I want to ask is if you feel like being away from home, especially because you talked about how those letters were really showing up when you would be away from home. If also being away from you grants you certain permissions artistically, like in terms of your creative process or whatever, or whether they take something away from you, because again, as you were saying, you're also encountering, say, racism or say classism or like a certain brand of misogyny that you might not experience at home, you know, and so on. So please talk about that if you can.
Okay. Well, of course, I do residences. I enjoy doing residences because then it grants you new opportunities or new interpretations to life. Because I feel like I've tried for a long time to separate my life and my artwork, and it's not working. So I just like, okay, let's just put it together. Let's just slap it together. And I don't think I would intentionally take myself to a space because, if I go to this space, then I will be able to act like this and this and this and this. And I'll be able to get this and this and this. There is, of course, spaces that you're like, maybe it will help me with this and that. But then what the work will look like is never something that I think of beforehand. I think I work a lot with the process and the process of being in that space. That's why earlier in the workshop we had all these books and papers and things, and notes really. So it's more to do with experiencing that part of life at that moment. Something that Adam spoke about, Jackie Caruti's book, how it's like meeting someone at that moment. You don't know their past, you don't know their future, you just know who they are then. And I think that's how I approach the art making process for myself. And I think I'm really lucky that I'm able to work in different medium, because then I can be able to say, okay, I want to do this, but I think it sounds better, or it works better with sound, or it works better with animation, and I can grab onto that. So, I think the medium is the message. Okay.
Shall I continue?
Yes.
I think I want to talk about sculpture versus book versus installation versus exhibition versus which other word did you say? Performance. So we had a few words, and I think you know, insofar as labels are useful in that they're connecting you to a long legacy of other people making that style. So I think that's when a label becomes sort of instructive. I would love to hear you like talk with us through what that hesitance is coming from with the book. My theory is that you've refused to adopt the title writer, which we can take offline. But I would love to hear you talk through what the different words mean to you, especially when it concerns this book. And I'll give an example. I've been learning sign language this year, which has been fun, but it's kind of wild to experience new letters with my body. So for example, Immy, that's M-Y, which is a completely new way to experience that. So I think, it's giving me some ways to feel embodied with the language in ways that I think I enjoy. Anyway, all of that is to say, tell me a little bit about sculpture book versus artist book and so on.
Okay. Like I said, making a book was not my intention from the beginning.
Okay.
No, it was not my intention from the beginning. It was more like a multimedia artist saying how best can I collapse what I have been doing into one. So let's say that's my intention and my experiment with making one medium kind of, but it's still I don't know if I still fail at that, but okay, it still has sound in it.
Yes.
It has the sculpture
The
of
space,
yes, element of it. It has text in it. It has an animation in it, and then it has the work that you can only feel. I don't know what you would call that. Maybe that's still sculpture. So with this particular work, I think it was an attempt to bring all these things together, to collapse them. Also because I work better with 3D objects. With 3D objects, with the sounds that they could make. And I find myself going to that. I do find myself lending myself to, I'm using this word a lot, to a lot of different medium, but it's usually the 3Dness, the ability to walk around it, to touch it, and what. We could call it an artist book, but
That's fair. And maybe I think a lot of authors have this problem where you've left your child to go out and then you realize at the last minute this child did not wash their face, and that's your book and it's out there. And I think that I'm always, when I meet someone and they're in a book, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, let me explain what happened. And so I want to give this whole story, which I think is particular because we feel like the book is flat, and you want to to return that roundness of that story. So I think in this process, it still has some of the things with the book, where a lot of the letters, of course, you feel that wonderful papery, you can turn it, you hear the sound, but it's still, a big part of it is still, flat. And so I wonder, all these years later, here in this group, what excuses do you want to make for this child? Or a better question is more like, give us some of the juice that you feel like maybe we could plug in and we also get because you're here.
Wow. Give us some of the juice.
Yes, we want to know the background, the things that was scrapped. We want to feel like, I want to feel like, what are the things, pieces of this story that you are happy to share with us?
Okay. Well, so some of the things that I tried or attempted were, one is like, okay, I'm writing to Marcue. She is sort of like an imaginary person kind of right now. And I'm having this conversation with her, and then I tried having an actual kid So I started writing.
For the art,
No,
obviously.
I'm not my own child. Not my own child.
Okay.
No, but I started writing to an actual child.
Okay.
Is what I meant to say. And having letters. So we were on a residency at Rhodes, and there was a child, and so I would write to him, and he would respond in drawings.
Yeah.
Drawings and I've actually got the letters here that we exchanged with him.
Nice.
So he would respond in drawings and scribbles, and then later on when I would meet him during the day, it would be like, oh, this is the snake that we found there, and this is this,
Nice.
and I was telling you about this, because I'd be like, I want to pretend that I understand this, but I don't. So I'd be like, so you wrote your letter, but I would like you to tell me what is in the letter. So I tried that. That was part of the process. And then I also had moments of exhibition mishaps that were happening during the time of writing the letters. And so, of course, I write about these in the letters.
Yep.
But there's also a point, there's a consciousness to kind of not name names in the letters, not name names. Some of them don't name places, and I feel like the place needs to be the time.
Yeah.
So I looked at time as a place in the letters. There are moments where I think eventually towards the end I start talking about places.
Yeah.
And actually naming them, but then looking at time as a place, I think was also very important, so that it's not situated in a particular place, and also just in case the issues with memory that I do not have to get into. Some issues of sexual abuse and things like that also kind of trickled in, but then we're kind of covered up in different ways, but maybe that also comes from the societal situation, societal interpretation or engagement with topics of sex and sexual abuse and things like that. So those are some of the things. Religion also comes in. So there's different topics that have been suppressed and kind of try to come out and then don't come out. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but yeah.
You've got the background, the BTS. I think that's helpful. I want to still give room for people to jump in, so feel free to interrupt me. But I guess I have a penchant for letters. I love letters. I love those high school. We used to write each other letters in high school, and you do on the envelope, and you do that calligraphy. So I think that they are kind of a wonderful form, biblical, epistolary, etc. So I think I wondered, this is the last question for me, and then we can give some room, is if you have a set of favorite letters, like exchanges that you've seen, either they're real or maybe in your own family. And so I thought that'd be a wonderful way to close.
You've spoken of high school and letters, and I have letters, of course, that I got from one of my uncles. And one of the letters, he literally had to hand it over to me because he had written it on the bus. He was coming from a different district, coming to visit me, and it was about a 5-hour bus ride. And so he wrote this on the bus, just in case he doesn't get to see me. And so he gave it to me, and we were both in tears because the gate was closed, but we had to pass it through. So I've kept that letter. And then I also have letters that I used to write to my mom in high school. Or could you bring me this? My Omo is finished. I need 2 bars of soap. So things like that. So I've got these letters as well. I was just looking at them there, and I was like, this is interesting to have now, because I kind of didn't think I had them anymore. Then I was going through a bunch of old books and I found them. So Yeah, so that's definitely there. There's letters I've been reading, but I can't remember. I can't remember the letters I found online, but I can't remember when. And that was also a while ago. But if I find them, I can definitely share them. Yeah.
Yes. Send them to Nkai. Drop them off at the desk. I don't know how to put it.
Clearly.
Other questions?
It's a rain?
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
Shem.
Okay.
The weather was so nice today.
Failed attempt.
It's a good try.
Hi.
Thank you so much. This is so interesting. It was a bit of a struggle for me to. I'm not used to seeing art like that, so it was wonderful to try and think from that perspective. So I have two questions. One, what have you learned about the things that you keep and you throw away from this process?
Okay.
And another about connection. You mentioned how in the process of asking for permission, in the process of ensuring you have consent, you had these interactions with your mom and with your partner, and you've shared about your uncle. So I'm wondering if there are any surprising connections you built because of this process, or if there are surprising ways you've connected to you as a child because of this process.
Well, so the process of making, I think I just talked in the workshop. I talked about how I had to pay for a courier service to bring like 2 suitcases of just papers and scribbles and stuff back to me. So I feel like maybe I'm a hoarder in that sense.
Archivist.
Archivist, okay. No, but I hate to lose any scribbles or notes I've done, and I'm not the best at making them because sometimes they're on receipts. Like I'm sitting and I have a receipt, but then I have some thoughts, so I keep writing them. So I kept the process. I don't know what I'll do with it eventually, but I hold on to it. So it's hard for me to do away with it. If I do away with it, then it's because maybe I'm melting it or breaking it down to make an artwork. So I'm still not putting it away. But in terms of, well, connections, there's been interesting connections to, of course, people that I would maybe never have written to or have had interactions with. And the process for me was a place of finding boldness to ask, because I feel like this happens a lot. This happens a lot with women who are artists or in the creative field, that we do not ask enough, or we do not say what our terms are or what we expect enough, compared to what our male counterparts do, in terms of maybe pay, or in terms of looking for particular opportunities or things like that. I spoke about an artwork where I had to go to the blood bank, talk to the principal, and convince her to give me my blood to use in my artwork. It wasn't an easy thing. Everyone told me, why don't you use food color? That could work. I was like, then it just loses meaning if we use food color. So that, yeah, I've learned a lot that anything is possible if you just ask. If you just ask and then know why you're asking, and do not shy away from why you're asking, anything is possible. So I think that is something that I am learning. I am not good at it yet, but I'm learning in a process that anything can happen when you ask. So yeah.
So ask, y'all.
sorry if I'm holding the mic. Something you mentioned that writing to Marcue, you said, was kind of an imaginary character. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was there at some point, was this character based on someone, an actual person at some point? And if so, I don't know if it's possible to describe, but how was the move from writing to this actual person who lives or who has lived, and then moving towards, someone who is more of an imagined character? Were there moments at which it was very clearly towards the actual person? Were there moments where it was very clearly towards the character? Or was it kind of always parallel? How did that negotiation happen?
So the process of writing, when I started, I wanted to believe, I always put myself in a place to believe that it was a younger me who still exists somewhere that I am writing to. And when I write, when you read the letters, it feels like this person is actually in this place here. And so that's why you have that range of photographs. Who is her? So when I say imaginary, I think it's me contradicting myself, or being in a place of contention with, do I accept that this person, I have created this being somewhere, or do I just accept that, it could be an imaginary being? But also playing with the illusion of memory, and what can you hold on to, what can you let go of? And it sort of takes me to oral storytelling, and how the story keeps evolving from one teller to the other, because there's the beauty of the narrator adding something to it. So I think it's sort of that space that makes me think it's imaginary and yet not. Because I've also imagined writing a three-way letter, but then I don't know. Logistics. But
Hi. Initially, I had a different question, but when you said a three-way letter, it got me thinking. I think it got a lot of us thinking. I don't know, you talked about writing to a younger version of yourself that exists somewhere. So like in this concept of a three-way letter, is it like you writing to or creating something, because we also talked about different mediums and how a medium is a message, to your younger version of you, an older version of you, your present, and just the...
Sorry, I feel like I'm missing some of the question.
Oh, sorry. The three-way letter.
Yes.
Could it be like a concept of you creating something, or you tapping into something to discuss, or to, I don't know, experience? I don't really know how to phrase this question, but experience your life through the lens of your younger self, your present self, your future self, or even like putting yourself in your mother's shoes, in your uncle's shoes, or something like that. I don't know.
Immy cubed.
Yep. Well, that the three-way letter also just kind of came to my mind not very long ago. So it came to my mind not very long ago. It's just something that I've kept thinking about. There's this program on BBC, Dear Daughter. I don't know if you've listened to it. You've had it?
Of course,
okay.
You have had it.
So there's that program on BBC called Dear Daughter, where different parents are writing to their daughters about their lives, or things they should look out for, or things that what they have done in the past, or thought of in the past. So the concept of the three-way letter is, I've not thought of, I've been asked if I would write to my future self, but I've been very hesitant to do that. I do not know if I just like going backwards. Some like conversations with someone. Because with the future self, then I would have to invent this future being and then start talking to this future being and make up a space in which this future being exists. It's an interesting concept, but one that I haven't been very keen on. So it's sort of just a process of thinking. So yeah. Yeah. Yes, please.
And it's very curious because I understand that the recipient is meant to be younger, but in my mind I still envision them as wiser. Yeah. Like, you know, the agony aunt in the newspaper who writes back with all the solutions. Yes, you should leave him, like, etc., etc. Yes, so that's kind of how I imagine the other side looking. Yeah.
Also, when with the sculptures that sort of come out of the letters, because the sculptures like the dressing chamber and all these sculptures kind of come from those letters. So I feel like those are responses. So when you speak of a wiser person, yes, like this person is just giving me this profound knowledge or something. Yeah.
Hi.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
That's for
you can hear me now. I wanted to ask, after you finished writing the book, was the process cathartic for you? What did you learn about yourself? What did you discover? What was like the whole point now after you finished for yourself? Like what answers did you have for yourself afterwards?
I don't think I have finished writing this book. I paused it. Because I started getting into a lot of collective memory, and one of the letters made me come to Shimoni. I had to go to the Shimoni caves, and just because of one of the letters that I was writing, and it started taking me into the dark history, and the slave trade, the colonialism, and all this. And I stopped at a point where I felt like, okay, the way I have written and the rawness needs to take a break now, and I just need to kind of expound more or read more and do more research about the next phases of the letter. So this is sort of like phase 1 of the letters, because then I feel like I am at a position now to understand more of, because it started at a point where my work, Daddy Can I Play, is a playground for children, but that children cannot use. So it's made of broken glass, it's made of razor blades, it's made of beer bottle cans, made of hair. So anything that you try to keep a child away from is this work. And then I was confronted with a question: is there something that you need to address in your childhood or to find out about in your childhood that is coming up in your work? And so that is where they started from. So, but when I got to a point where it's like all these other histories coming and getting intertwined, then I kind of had to stop. So I believe it helped me grow through some bits of history and know where the personal starts to become collective. I think I reached a point where I felt like the personal starts to become collective, and I cannot be writing to Marcue in that way now. So yeah, I think that's where kind of the stopping started. And yeah, but I've definitely I've encountered a lot of books on the way, a lot of recommendations of things to read. Yeah. Okay.
Hi. So, I'm just kind of trying to zoom out, and you spoke about trying to separate your practice and your life. So my question is, it's like more, how did you become this? Like, so okay, the simplest way to think about it is, did you go to art school? I'm imagining that you always thought like this, and then it became like your practice, or did it start by by art, and then you found all these memories and all these things that you can share, or I hope that's what I'm asking.
Yeah, we got you.
Okay. So it started from I've always liked to write. Much as I would say I'm a writer, I've always liked to write. I would write little stories to myself from when I was a kid. I also liked to do sketches and do drawings and things. But then I went to art school in Makerere University in Kampala. I went to art school, but it was also art school that was very much based on a Western model of education, and a very archaic model that they don't use anymore. So then after that, I got nominated for a residency at 32 Degrees. It was a very new residency. I was out of art school. I did not know what to do next. And I was like, okay, let me go do this as I figure out what else I want to do. And quite shockingly, that was the first place that I encountered contemporary African art. So that then started the interrogations into different things. And then I was also just more curious about critical thinking in art, and sort of that's where the threads kind of, or the web started building from. Yeah.
I have a question that kind of follows up on what you said about making a pause because you're delving into collective memory, because of also part of the formatting of it as letters. When we think about communication, I also often think about ways in which there can be faulty communication or ineffective communication, and all of that is actually not that uncommon in any kind of text-based communication. So I was wondering about your thoughts in the possibility of making mistakes and communicating something wrongly, even though it has personal meaning to you. It might also conflict with other people's perceptions, but at the same time, it is still communication.
Well, when I attempted to work with the publisher to make a book, I attempted to work with an editor as well, and also gave my copies to proofreaders to go through them. I think that was a failed attempt. So I withdrew them because I was like, okay, it's conceptual art, so I have the liberty to leave it to be open to interpretation. In terms of communication, and when I decided to have a stop, definitely there's a point where it felt like a lot of things were coming back, and I felt like there are things that when it becomes collective memory, then there's definitely references already that exist, and I could not ignore that anymore. I could not ignore that anymore. I could not act like it does not happen, and so, oh, I don't know about this, so I'll just keep writing. So that kind of enabled the stop. but also the ability to write until that point came from a point of maybe just me indulging myself into this process, because I felt like I could do that and I did not have to worry about an outsider's interpretation of this work. Yeah, so because it's open to so many, I've had people who encounter the book and it has its own interpretations for them, but I wasn't worried. I was able to do it until where it got to, because I wasn't thinking so much about, oh, if I write this like this, how will someone interpret it, and how will that go with someone else? So I think that enabled that happen. But of course, in terms of communication and starting to be off, I kind of was like, okay, collective memory, definitely people have done this and have a lot of backing with this, so I need to be able to read in order to engage with those stories. Yeah. Okay.
My question is on the making process, like especially the editing process. How do you make the decision to, because I know, or I'm assuming you like have a lot of material you work through when you're making work, like you're looking at a lot of say maybe pictures, you're writing a lot, there's a lot of material to look through. How do you decide what goes into the book? What's that process like? Are you thinking about the people who are going to look at the book? Are you thinking about how they're going to look at it? Are they, because an artist book is, at least the form I've seen, is not, you're not reading to like get content, you're engaging it in a different way. It's just the form. So how do you make those decisions? Yeah. How do you know it's like ready for viewing, for exhibition? Yeah.
It's always hard for one to know if artwork is ready. But maybe I'll just say it was selfish. As long as I was comfortable with the content that I had collected, one, I knew I needed 5 things to be in this book. So one is that pattern that you see on the top and at the back. That is it's from a game that we call Kasonko that we used to play as kids. So that game keeps coming up in the letters because it's a place that I played a lot. So from the age of 5 to about 12, 13, girls play this game a lot. And so I knew that needed to be part of this. It holds the memories, was my thinking. And then the letters, of course, I thought of editing them. I even started transcribing and thinking of editing them, but I was losing so much. One, the rawness, the scribbles, the design of the letters, the handwritten letters could also be lost because with a computer typewritten thing, it's something else. So I knew that one was supposed to be in. Then there are these sort of lenses that I made for the images that I wanted to include. And then I thought, okay, Immy, this is too much. You can't put that in. So those I kind of said, okay, I'll put this away. I decided to put those away. And then, yeah, have a selection, of course, of images because I have a lot more images. But the selection of images was more to do with maybe things that I encountered quite frequently. So there's an image of a mat. I don't know if it's clearly a mat in the photo for you, but I would understand it as a mat, a sieve, a ball, a doll, things like this that kept coming up in the letters. I kind of kept having that. yeah, so that was sort of the process of making. And also I definitely shared the process of, the project with, so at the Rex Academy you have like advisors who come in. Gabin Kobo was one of them. And I also shared with her, like, I'm doing this project, I want to do this. And so of course people will just give you insights or thoughts of what they think might be good to be part of something. So I did have a lot of consultations as well. But the ultimate 5 things that I wanted to be there were kind of just a personal decision. And as like, it could be a failed project for other people, but for me, the creator, I felt like that's a point where all this work could come together. Yeah.
Okay. I think Andrew, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, thank you. My question is on the form of language that you use, the sound vis-a-vis what's written, what informs that, and why the difference?
So the sound is a very dysfunctional audiobook. Because it doesn't follow any, like when you listen to an audiobook, you kind of have a chronological following of how the book starts and how it ends. But with this one, I'm reading some of the letters, and then as I'm reading, I feel like I delete some of the words because I feel like, oh, I don't need to mention that. So that also kind of comes in. So the sound is, just look at it as a dysfunctional audiobook because it has songs as well, and some of the songs are not really in the letters but are mentioned, and then some of them are just songs that come as part of memory, and then I just sing through them. So you'll kind of keep hearing these things that are not connected at all in terms of what the letters look like. So that bit is there. The letters, are just, I don't know.
World building.
Yeah, but I hope I've answered a bit of your question.
Yeah. And obviously the book, the space is here when Yinine wants to jump in. Okay.
I had a question about your choices of paper, because you're a sculpture artist, right? And you think of this book as a sculpture, so like I'd like your comment on like the different kinds of paper that you use, because I noticed there's a lot of different like textures, transparencies, colors, etc. Like what are the choices about? Is it just purely aesthetic or like sensual, or is it something else that like ties in with the content of the letters and stuff? So I'm curious to know about that.
Okay. So the letters bit of the book, so you start the book on the pink end. Well, I don't like making people start it anywhere, but sort of that is where it starts. And then you encounter, of course, fabric. As the choice of cover, and that is also maybe that is possibly from a feminine space, that I decided that fabric is something that I have encountered a lot. I've been brought up by a single mom from the age of like 3, so fabric and dealing with fabric, and also one of the aunts I've grown up with is a tailor, and I've done a lot on her sewing machine. So I've encountered fabric a lot in different ways. The section that has the letters themselves is printed on Bible paper, the thickest form of Bible paper, which is really light. And this paper allows you to see the letter beneath and the letter beneath and things like that. And it's also just playing with memory and how sort of it merges. When you're thinking of one thing, something else comes up, and it's not solidly just one memory that comes up, but all these memories intertwined. So that is very delicate paper, but it also has girls playing that game by Shu, I love you, baby. That one as an animation, and you can only encounter it very slowly. So it's also a bit disturbing that you can't see it as an animation. If you opened it fast, you could, but then the paper does not allow you to do that. So that is also something that I love about this particular paper, that it slows you down and allows you to see this action in different fragments. So you're able to see kind of like frozen bits of play. Yeah, so that, and then the middle section that has the photographs is the sort of paper that will eventually keep rubbing as it's opened and closed over the years. It may be more than like 5 years, but over the years it will keep rubbing against each other. And so this kind of, for me, records the memories of whoever is handling the book and working with the book. That interaction, the memory of the interaction is sort of in there. And then, of course, the sound box is made of wood. It's made of plywood for the resonance of the sound. Yeah, so it's just those different steps. And the top, of course, is made from puff, I don't know, puff print? Yeah. Which is just for someone to be able to touch the tactility of it. Yeah.
And you can experience this book on our right. And so I think this is a good place to stop. I thank you for sharing all of this with us. You're welcome to linger, right, Don? We can linger.
Yes, you can linger. Thank you so much, Immy. Thank you for the work. Thank you for your time. Thank you for answering our questions, for giving us more to think about. Thank you very much, Alex, for also spending time with the work and for bringing up those questions in this conversation. To everyone who's here with us at Nkai, to everyone who's joined us online, we appreciate your participation, your questions. This makes our work possible, and we hope to learn from you as well. Yeah, I think it's been a good afternoon. Yes, you are welcome to linger. The work is on display. Immy is available. Let me not offer you up to the vultures, but I believe she might be open to a question or two. And yeah, have a good rest of the day. Thank you, everyone.
And curator.
Thank you too. It's been lovely talking to you and encountering your work. I'm still mad at myself. Yes, I wish we had more time to talk about your work, you know.
I would jump like this over the border.
Yes, please. And then, yeah, thank you so much also for having me in Kai. It's been lovely. Been very good hosts, so thank you.